this really quick. Okay. Yes. So, welcome to the Here to There show. Today we have business laws that every owner should know and follow. And our guest today is Shomo. And Shomo, why don't you take it from here?
Thank you. So, if you can let me share my.
I gave you co-host. So, if you don't have that, let me just check.
You might have given it to me before I dropped off.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so make co-host. You should be good to go, my friend.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I'm just going to let people know that if I'm hearing some background noise, I'm going to be playing whack-a-mole and just muting you on that. So
you can
mute
me too. So thank you. So it's your Widen Your Gaze Friday. Thank God it's Friday. So from a context setting perspective, I could have talked about COVID, but I guess that's too close and too raw, too fresh. So I went back a few years to the dot-com boom or the bust that happened after that. The environment at that time, like when if you think back, uh, the businesses, the most prominent business that has survived since then is Amazon. But a host of businesses went under at the turn of the century. Like these businesses started coming up in the late 90s, mid 90s, and then by the time we were in 2002ish, all those businesses went. A whole lot of those businesses went bust. And it sort of seemed that everyone, all the businesses, including the investors, had sort of taken leave of their business senses. And they were paying $10 Amazon gift certificates for just a name and an email ID. So one could get into Hotmail, create 10 IDs and get $10 or $5 off each of them, and while they wouldn't get rich, but that those expenses would mount up for the businesses, and they sort of couldn't keep up anymore. And uh, around that time, investors and mostly the Silicon Valley folks figured out that business plans were not something that they could rely on. Uh, the business plans said that, like, if they had 1,000 customers signing on to their website, then that translated somehow into millions and millions of dollars, and that there really did not happen. So if they what they figured out is that there were certain things which no matter what the technology, or no matter what the age is, um, there are things which you cannot really get past. And it's almost like laws. And to get back to the question that Murray had asked earlier, like, what do we mean by laws over here? And most of the time when you look up the word law, you come across regulations, code, and things like that. But what I'm referring to are things like basic natural laws, or or say hygiene laws. If you don't brush your teeth, you will have bad teeth eventually. Um, and if you jump off the 10-story building, gravity will claim you almost instantaneously. So these laws might have a different time horizon, but they are nevertheless, you can't have an excellent attorney or a lawyer to get past those laws, as you can in the other realm of regulations and stuff. So what are so we are talking about business laws, right? And I thought like it was important to at least, um, for the sake of this conversation, have a clear understanding, or set forward what I mean by business laws. So between two, or like there's a cause effect relationship, and between two or more phenomena, and that it's is simple enough. And let's go ahead with that definition. um, so uh, I'll go through a few of these which I uh, I have put together. There are four of these, and I believe like most of the stuff that we see happening can be retrofitted to one of these laws. And another thing to remember in this case is that we are talking about uh, very like logical or very fundamental part of the business, and not the physical implementation of it. That uh, that's a statement I'll just throw out, and go forward, if we and not spend too much time on that, because that in itself can take us down a quite a different route or a path. So the first law, and before I go to the first law, there is some statistic from data from the Small Business Administration in the US, and it suggests that a lot of the small businesses go out of business between the third to seventh year of their life. In some cases, they look at it fifth to seventh year of life, third to fifth year of their life, whatever be the case. So it also like those type of milestones. The If you look at enough data, that also has like points towards a bit of some correlation between what has been happening and these laws. And I can later on, once we have been through these four chunks, we can come back and then look at like what those correlations are, and see whether these make sense or not. So the first one, I try to refer to it as the resolution law. Like a business has to resolve a problem um, that an identified customer segment is suffering from. Um, I One of the things hats that I have is as a mentor in a entrepreneurship program at Rutgers University over here. And what they do is they take patents, IP from either Rutgers patents or Navy patents, and they work on it, and try to come up with a from the technology, they try to come up with a product, and then fit it to a market. And I remember one team at this point in time where they thought like this business was pretty cool. They were looking at a way to have fluorescent vodka and fluorescent drinks that would be served at a bar or a restaurant. And that in their minds was something which would draw in people because of the novelty of it. It would be a cool thing to have. They went out and spoke with a few of the bartenders, and then they asked, like, would this be something which they would it would be they would be interested in trying out? And most of the time, the answer would be, why not? Yes. But the thing which they then realized is that like they were not really, there wasn't a business case behind it. Like if they had to, as a hobby, or as a 3 week as seen on TV campaign, this could be good enough. But if they were not solving a challenge or a problem someone had, then the whole thing would not take off, and that's where that idea sort of fizzled out for them. So when we talk about resolving or solving to a problem, and the wisdom, general wisdom, accepted wisdom is that like you find a problem, you solve it, you have a business. But what also happens is that like you can also take an aspiration. So it is just not a pain point. So it is either one of these or a combination of these which need to be the are in search of a resolution. So there's a pain point, there could be an aspiration, and there could be a, a job that needs to be done, which in itself doesn't sound like a, a, a lot of pain or a huge thing to look forward to, but is important enough. And if it doesn't happen on time, then the business would could be in serious trouble. Things like making payroll at the end of the month, paying sales tax at the end of a period, could be those type of issues where it is just a job to be done, and but it is nevertheless important. And if you can make the whole Intuit tax filing platform is just that, like it is it you one might say it is reducing pain with in relation with other solutions, but in a sense it is just a important job that needs to be done. So that is when I talk, and there are the business could have um, uh, you don't like if a business or a business owner goes and speaks with someone who is in the client or the market segment, they may not uh, they might list out say 5 or 10 pain points, and a lot of them could be towards the extreme, some of them could be the moderate end of it. um, and you need not be able to solve all the pain points or respond to all the aspirational stuff and still have a business. One of the examples that comes to my mind, or what I am able to figure out now, is say there for example, let's take a couple who has a young child, say a toddler, at home, and the couple wants to have, before COVID, wants to have a quiet evening out, a bit of the ordinary type of an evening, and is wondering what they can do. So one option could be go to the restaurant. In order to do that, they would need to find either a child friendly restaurant, like where they would have like a high chair and stuff like that for the child, or find a babysitter who is responsible and leave the kid with the babysitter. Another another solution could be to go to the movie, and that in itself would have its own what they would need to do in order to do that. Or they could just get some popcorn at home and look at the stream, like pay something for a streaming movie and do the whole thing at home. So for the same environment, for the same objective, or for the same aspiration, there can be multiple types of businesses or business models which you can create. But the focus is that the business needs to resolve uh, a major part of one of these three or a combination of these three. um, any questions on this?
I don't have a
This
question, but
is
I have a comment really quickly here. Sorry, I'd like somebody else. I can speak after. Was somebody else going to chime in there? Okay. So you know, what's extremely pertinent to me in this, in what you're saying, Shomo, is that I see this on a regular basis. Is the businesses haven't, they kind of know what they do, but they really haven't identified what problem they're solving. And it's kind of a feel good thing, and they're in love with their product and stuff like that. So, but they haven't done the work, and it's really hard to be relevant to your who you want to sell to if you really are not clear what problem you're solving. And people think they're solving one problem when they're still really solving another. So this is a huge issue across the board, and why I think so many business fails, because they haven't really worked on what they actually do on that.
And your example of that, they don't buy the drill bit, they buy the hole.
Right. Yeah.
Is,
Yeah. So, well, since you brought it up, I'm gonna just say that people don't buy 1/8 inch drill bits. They're buying 1/8 inch holes. Yeah.
So
Anyway.
that's the challenge, or that's what the benefit that is being offered.
Right.
So the next thing which I come to is the marketability law. That like the customer must have the ability and the willingness to pay a fair price to buy that product or service, right? Like otherwise it will be, you can have the best solution to a genuine problem, and still there might not be, either there might not be a takers, or there might not be a taker, or there could be takers but not at the price point that you would like to have. And the so if you like the earlier situation was, law was about solving the right problem, and here solving the right problem at a price, or rather if you turn it around, as at a cost to the customer which they are able to afford. Now when I was and then this goes back, the example that comes to my mind goes back a long time back. um, I it my dad and I was, the environment situation is in India. My dad had sensory deafness. Uh, it seemed that a cochlear implant would be something which could solve a part of the, like he wouldn't get his hearing back in the way at the level that we would all want to, but then there would be some remediation at least. But the fact, like the and this was, I'm talking about the mid 80s. And but obviously, there's this whole thing about the insurance and the cost of the equipment, and so it would have, if I had tried to get it over there at that time, I was told that it would cost me $15,000, and there weren't really surgeons who in India who would be able to implant it. They hadn't done enough of these. There could be one or two hospitals or other places where this could be done. So the problem was there, and there was a solution too, but the economics of the whole thing was such that it was not affordable to the person, to the customer who needed it. And you see that in a lot of cases. And sorry, oops, it's responding a bit slowly. So if you nowadays, like there's the buy local stuff, where programs where we are encouraged to buy locally, but the do you go to, if the same stuff costs way less in a grocery chain departmental store, then do you go there, or do you go to the independent seller? Do you go, you would like to have organic food, but is the price difference um, insignificant, or is it significant for some? You would want to go on a vacation, but health reasons aside, can you afford the time and the expenses? You would want to drive into a city, but and commute in your own car. Uh, so even if you have a good parking, would the tolls and everything work out better, or do you want to take the subway? So these are the type of like it's not only can they pay, but will they pay for it? Like do they, with every cost comes a benefit. So to, is it something that they just can't live without, or would they just either forego the solution, live with the situation, or find a solution that is more affordable for them? Um, so we would be going to the next one, and if there are any thoughts, questions on these two, I guess like once we have done the next one, there could be more questions and stuff.
Well, and I'm gonna weigh in here again because I can, and it's this is where, okay, so further to my world and what I see on a regular basis is that very often businesses are so in love with their product they can't get why people wouldn't buy them. So if you are a health food, you if you do, let's say, offer organic products, but they are so far above everything else, principles will only get you so far with your customer base, right? It's, I remember there was many years ago, there was a store here that was selling square watermelons. They actually put them in a glass and they grew them and they were square. Well, they are $100 a watermelon. Yeah, the novelty's fine, but $100 worth. So yeah, so that's the thing I think we have to ask ourselves is, because we think it's a great idea, because we think it's a great product, will it work? And we see this on a regular basis. People going into heavy debt because they haven't done their research, they haven't done their due diligence. Is
And
that
often we have these businesses which we call lifestyle businesses, uh, meaning that they wouldn't scale beyond a particular point, and it's just that they are based on some principles, as you said, some causes, some concepts which are necessary perhaps, but then they aren't something which you can convert it to a long term business. And I have a my I haven't come across a research which definitively makes this correlation, but my hunch is, or my guess is, that those milestone years that I mentioned of a business going out of business between the X and the Y year of their life, these are the two milestones which sort of trip them up. The first one is like if they go out of business within the first, second, third year of their life, they might have had the money or the capital to get past, or to just go on and have a business presence, even though it is not really a business, and they are not solving a problem. Then they go out in that first slab of 3 years of their life. If they have somehow been able to get past that, and they are still going ahead, and then they have got their customers, and the customers are paying at the rate, or almost at the rate that they want, then even then there is only it is only for so long that you can carry on without having enough number of customers. So what we are talking about is now the longevity of that business, which is like the sustainability of the business.
and
So
just
yeah,
one thing I want to say. So I heard this term many years ago, but this somebody just bought themselves a job by starting a business. He was a long distance truck hauler, and he just said, "Yeah, I just bought myself a job." Right. But it wasn't scalable, because then he couldn't get behind he driving that kind of stuff, right? So do you see that a lot of people just basically creating a position for themselves and hoping it's going to
right,
fly?
right. And someone once told me that he had a terms which said retired retail, which is retired folks starting off a retail outlet, like a store, a storefront, and almost like pretending playing office, right? Like you. And when he said that, I remembered I'd been to, like, I am in New Jersey. I was there at one of the short towns, Manasquan, and we went into this store, and it had stuff which were, it was almost like a consignment store, but filled with children's products, so toys and stuff like that. And the lady who owned it, her life story was like she said that, like, she used to do a lot of local government municipal jobs, and it was the challenges where, like, it would take at times up to 18 months to get one of our invoices cleared, and cash flow was an issue, and then stuff, so she gave up that business. um, Most likely, like, she gave it up for not only that but for other reasons. It was almost like a semi retirement, and she opened up the store. Excuse me. And she said that, like, now friends know where to find her. And that seemed to be the main thing which she was excited about. She was at one place throughout the day, and anyone who knew her knew where to find her. So that would not be a very good way of, like, that's not a model which is like it's not a business. It can be a great hobby, but you cannot depend on the business to pay its dues, pay its owner, pay its employees, and continue with that outlook. So
It
if you
kind of,
are to,
sorry,
yeah,
sorry,
no, go
Sharma.
ahead, go
No,
ahead.
it kind of reminds me of, what do you call a leader with no followers?
Mhm,
A guy taking a
mm,
walk.
mm, mm.
Yeah, it's just like,
Yeah.
so you're right. There is a few comments. So Marie had said that's why you have to test your product or service to prior to mass producing it. Absolutely. And John asked a question: do you think that the problem may be that some crazy things like pet rocks, for example, would be an entrepreneur's false sense of the idea of succeed?
Right. So go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that I actually have a webinar that is called, I do it intermittently. It's called What They Don't Tell You When They Tell You to Quit Your Job to Make a Six-Figure Income. And I think there's a lot of stuff out there that is, oh yeah, it's not hard. It's not a problem. A work an hour a day, the checks in the mail and all the other stuff, right? But there's a constant bill of goods that people are getting, that being an entrepreneur is the latest thing, right? So yeah, I think there is these false sense of success that we see, but we don't see the multitudes that fail, do we, Shoma?
No, 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 no. And Sarah made an important point that, like, we do not always, like, there are some weird businesses which have survived through or for a long time. And my hunch is that, like, if you look at them closely, you would find that they respond to, like, they may not, like, it's all depends on what scale do you want to get to. um, it's almost like a assumption that all businesses would like to grow and grow and grow, um, uh, but not all businesses, or not all business owners, stakeholders might want to grow a business beyond a certain point in time. Like, if it might just say that, okay, this is my segment, this is where I will, what I'll offer to them, and I this is what I'll make, and that's good enough for me. So if it is good enough for some cases, then it might occur, might just survive and succeed.
Yeah.
So
And the other thing I think we hear about is those businesses that just were wildly successful, or that got traction very quickly. I was on a call before about an hour ago from I was talking to some people in Texas, and there's a woman who basically was a recruiter, and she worked for one of the big ones, and then she just decided to do it on her own because all she wanted small, and then a year later she has 14 staff. And it's just like, right? So we hear those stories about, it could just take off. You never know, right? And it's a lot of cognitive dissonance. Yes, Chris.
I have a story about businesses not growing too fast. So my grandpa decided to actually came out of like managing like multiple plastic factory plants through the 50s and the 60s. And in the early 1970s, he ended up either buying or taking over or like a plant in the middle of Massachusetts. And he really decided, he just, manufacturing, but he really decided not to grow too big because he didn't want to work too hard after a certain point. And I think it's like maybe in the 80s or the 90s, he was said that like a bunch of other plastics factories grew faster and they went out of business. And he
Crushed
he
by their own
survived.
success.
He survived longer. And then this is actually Leominster, Massachusetts is big time plastics factory. So he was involved with, they started a plastics museum, and he thought it should just be limited, but other people wanted to grow it bigger, and it grew bigger, and that went out of business.
So what I think we are also talking about over here is what is the vision of the business, and therefore what is the mission of the business. If there was a business further south in Jersey where that was closing shop after having been in business for 40 years. They were carpeting, flooring, window treatment type of a business, and they were around for 40 years. They still had a good customer base, and it was the owners decided that there wasn't anyone who wanted to take it over, and they closed shop. So the thing about these type of businesses are like at there could be a separate discussion whether like the legacy question of the business, and legacy does not always mean when you are dead and gone. There is this business in Woodbridge downtown where it's a fast food fried chicken type of a restaurant. uh, they see that like a lot of the local successful entrepreneurs started off their career at that place. And then so there are multiple aspects to the business. So we really are not getting into the mission that or the vision that sort of powers the the business. And that is a discussion which is like which sort of in the sequence of stuff, it comes earlier to these finding the problem for the customer segment and stuff. So to get back to this, like what sort of gets what are we talking about when we say sustainable and making money over the like funding itself? And so everyone knows that when a business runs out of cash, that's almost like any business that goes bankrupt does so when it runs out of cash. uh, and they keep on paying. If the profitability goes down and down, they try to make payroll from the reserves. They try to pay their due from the reserves, and ultimately they run out of cash. So the cash flow, the reserves, and the profitability are the three things which which we are talking about when we talk about sustainability and funding itself. Incidentally, like there could be a business that's very profitable, but has a terrible cash flow and still run out of cash and go out of business. That is possible. Uh, but to get to how, my mouse keeps jumping back and forth. I'll have to do something about it.
I just really appreciate all the engagement that people have as Shomo figure this is out. And I'm killing time, Shomo, so just tell me when it's talking.
So how do we get to this? So when we talk the sustainability, what do we? So we have talked about the market, the resolution to a problem, which is almost like the value proposition to a customer need. We have talked about the the marketability, where people are talking about yes, I want to buy and actually buy the product, and then whether it is happening at a sufficiently high scale for a long time over the time frame. Now, that for that to happen, there is suddenly we are talking about much more than two or three simple attributes. We are then talking about the whole business model of the business. Now, when I talk about the business model, the figure on the right is what I really talk about. Now, it can go down to a lot more details, like these four chunks. They revolve, or they break down into 9 cells, and they become what is called the business model canvas. But like I think this is a level of detail that is adequate for today's discussion. So let me go through bit by bit on the who, why, how, and what of the business. So we have talked about like the customer, right? So if a restaurant says their customer is anyone who is hungry, then it most likely doesn't really know whom they are selling to. Even if it is like a fast food restaurant, there is or say a pizza joint, even then they need to have a sense of, so is it millennials that they are talking about, or is it the family with two or three kids that they are talking about? Like if they haven't set out with a specific focus in mind, as they have plowed through the first two stages of their business, would have enough data, or hopefully they would have enough data to figure out like what niche are they looking at. Now, all of us know that, or it is again something which we are told that it is easier to retain your business customer than acquire new customers. So the flip side to that is if you focus, or rather, if you focus on selling repeat sales, then you also need to look at your churn of customers whom you are losing. So you cannot keep on depending on repeat sales and lose existing customers. uh, then like even if you have a huge pile of loyal customers at the beginning, slowly you will run down that list, right? do your do how you reach them, or how when I talk about channels, I am talking about like a business being able to reach the customers. And when I'm talking about customer journey, I'm saying that like they are aware of the problem, they are aware of or they are aware of the aspiration, they are aware of your business, they have evaluated your business, and then they have become your customer. And at each of these four stages, they are looking for different types of information. So as a business owner, the business owner needs to be able to tweak or have messaging which is suited to the life cycle stage of the customer. Now, the value proposition is something which is at times the most difficult thing to nail down. Um, I have had a client who sells skincare products. So she sells moisturizers and products like that. Um, she is good at her job. Her products are good. She used to private label for Estee Lauder. Now she does a lot of her selling at trade shows, and so we were talking about how to find alternate outlets or markets for her. And I asked her about the value proposition. And after a while, she almost got mad at me, like with the thing that, like, Shomo, people buy my product, they are good products. Why do I need to define my value proposition? And then after a while, she realized that if she's going to a new market, like, for example, if she's going to reach out to salons and spas and places like that, and so that they carry her products on their shelves, then she has to articulate and tell them that this is what you can tell your customers when you have the new product on the shelf. It's just not this, the supplier of this product has been selling for 25 years, therefore this product is good. Wouldn't cut the, like, wouldn't be an argument, good enough argument.
And it's almost like she had a false sense of security that it's working, so why break it, right? Why do you need to work on it? I did a consult with someone recently who he's been in business for 7 years, and the works always came to him, and all of a sudden COVID, and he goes, and he's literally saying, I don't know how to market myself. I have no, because he never had to, because word of mouth referrals, it was coming in, he was making good money, you know. The only reason I've learned how to market myself is because I've had to.
Because of COVID.
But just even out there, right? Because it's setting up my shingle as a life coach like 7 years ago, and then realizing I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I did buy myself a job, not very effectively, but anyway, I digress. Go ahead, Shoma.
And there is this Richard Bach, the guy who wrote that Jonathan Livingston Seagull book, and he has some of other books like that, and he has this one of the quotes that I remember from one of his books is, "You teach best what you most need to learn." So I think that's true for me too. Like, I'm most passionate and then try to share the knowledge with people on subjects that I also most need to learn. So all of us are almost on the same journey over there.
So
So
true.
the next is the how you, and this is the supply chain part of the thing, which we keep on hearing about. How do you fulfill customers orders? And it's just not when it's just not the supply. So let me get into a bit more than just saying supply chain. Like, there are the resources a business needs, there are the processes or the act, and by activities I don't mean the, like, the standard operating procedure type of detail. I'm talking about a very high level, like problem resolution or just network identification and stuff like that. So that are at a very, very high level, what are the processes that which are needed, and then who are your partners? Like, the partner strategy is often the most people, like business owners, think of it right at the like the partner, almost a lot of times partner becomes partner channel. And when you talk about partnerships, it is just not the channel. I'm talking about strategic alliances. So that's another part of the whole thing. And how efficient, like, do you have economies of scale? A type of questions come up. So the last part of this whole structure is what keeps it in business, or the profit motive or the finance of it, which is the viability of the business. and there it is revenue and cost. So the, like, if the is the cost something which is predictable, like if costs are not predictable, then you have a cash flow issue. If cost and revenue, if there isn't enough of a predictability, then there's not only this cash flow issue, like this lady that I was just mentioning, because it is a huge seasonal type of a thing, and she's never really confident of what her production would be level would be. She is reluctant to enter or commit to a certain level of hours of employment for any contract help that she gets from the market. As a result, the people that she brings in, they are not committed to her business. Like it is always a second priority to them, and consequently, she is not able to, like, it's often a mad scramble to get the batches out on the time that they need to go out. So predictability, also lack of predictability also affects people or businesses in terms of, like, if you are buying, and if you know that you will buy for buy so much of consumables for the whole year, you can then enter into bargains and get into purchase agreements. Like because of a purchase order, you can get lower costs even though you schedule or stagger the delivery of those goods throughout the year. So we there are pieces which we can skillfully dissociate and get the best out of the whole thing, and consequently have a um, better financial health of the business. And when you have, like, gotten into this type of like, you when you have, and this takes a bit of a time, like it's not the first time you try it out it may not work. Like there might be several iterations to tie up all the loose ends. And I wouldn't really call it testing in the way someone mentioned earlier, but but that is again, like, that's another aspect of that aspect of testing, I think, comes in right at the beginning of the whole thing. And there's a term in the industry which says minimum viable product, and we can talk about that if we have time. uh, but like this is something which almost sort of settles down, and it needs some time. Now, earlier, like before, say, the mid 90s, um, and even up to perhaps the Y2K milestone, uh, the management discipline or philosophy was that once you have figured out your business model and you have gotten a sustainable business, that can almost be on autopilot. Um, and you would therefore see a lot of investments, like businesses which were large, big, mammoth. They grew to a level where they had everything buttoned up, and then they were able to also um, bring in automation or systems which would let them run the whole thing, if not on autopilot, but a lot more smoothly. And in terms of investment for those larger organizations, those investments would get into things like ERP, SAP, PeopleSoft, Oracle. Those are the names of the ERP products. But what has happened since the web or the internet and the connectivity, super connectivity, and um, the payment gateways and stuff like that, which has happened, the movement is very dynamic. Like the business environment, even if a business has settled into a business model and therefore almost, I wouldn't say guaranteed, but a lot of assurance is there that it will survive without being anxious on a day-to-day or a quarter-to-quarter operation. Even then, the what might happen is they could end up being out of sync with their business, with their environment. They would cease to be adaptable to the environment. And one of the recent uh, examples I would say is Toys R Us. Like that business was large, huge, had been around for a long, long time, uh, but it did go out of business. And if when I walked the floors of the local Toys R Us, uh, the the sentiment was Amazon got us out of business. Um, I think like yes, Amazon is might be the symptom or whatever of their trouble, but really what they if you look at other um, uh, discussions or other analysis of what are the things which went wrong, one of them was the demographics of the customer population segment the demographics of the population changed, and the customer segment that they were selling to became narrower, shrunk, became narrower and narrower, and they didn't realize it, or even if they realized it, they didn't bring about offerings which would be valid for other customer segments too, or the way they engaged did not like so all the things which we talked about, the who, what, how, the who, why, how and what part of what we were talking about went through shifts, and it was the writing was on the wall, but they did not really respond to them. So what are the things that a business needs to look at, like when we are talking about the environment? If you if you are a student of management, or if you have been in management, there are things like the Porter's Five Forces. There are tools like um, the SWOT analysis, and then there are various tools which are available, which you can use nowadays. Like there are also things like pest analysis and stuff like that. And there are, if you know what you're looking for each of the stages which I have talked about, there are enough and more tools that you can use, which are available on the net, but you know what to go and look for, right? And so over here, when I'm talking about the environment, so there are trends which are so the culture changes. Like for example, uh, if I look at my journey or my experience, the first time I was in the United States way back in '96, uh, one of my co-workers who traveled from India with me at a PwC dinner, uh, we he ended up having just tomatoes and I think cheese or something like that, because the restaurant we went to, and it was an Italian restaurant, they didn't understand the concept of vegetarian food. And so another friend of mine, he went into a restaurant, ordered cheeseburger, um, and expected that it would be just buns and cheese, and so so he had a mess of stuff on his hand at the but now you see that like with more and more people being open to vegan food and stuff, there is a change. Not only that, businesses are going to, so McDonald's, KFC, they are going to other parts of the world, and not only sticking to the so-called more developed Western economies, countries. So the if you walk into them, they not only have different menu options on their options on their menu, but this whole thing about vegetarian and non-vegetarian, at times they have different sections of their kitchen labeled as this section um, cooks vegetarian food, this section cooks non-vegetarian food. The Imagine the effect of that on a business, the capital the business needs to have two duplicate sort of production lines just to make sure that they are responding to the needs of the local culture. So and we can go through each of these and look at what are the things which are going on in the environment with the trends and stuff. There are changes. Uh, I think these are a set of good pointers which can guide us to look at what is changing in the environment, because most of the time if we don't know what we are looking for, it often sort of falls into our blind spot. So so I have look, I have covered my
Okay.
content mostly
Yeah.
at a
Okay. Because I have some questions, and I'm pretty sure that the audience will also. But I want to go back to this idea of adaptability, and also, and if you could just stop sharing your screen there, Shomo.
Mhm,
So yeah,
mm.
thank you. So yeah, and the adaptability, often what I hear about is pivoting, and businesses need to pivot and whatnot. And so I'm having a hard time believing, and I don't think you said this, but when you talked about before, when companies, before the advent of the internet and payments and like that, they had a business. They had a business. It wasn't a business plan, but they had a business model, and they stuck with it. But how did they pivot? How did they adapt when they had it? Like, was the business model, because that sounds like it's almost prescriptive. This is what thou shall and thou shalt not do that on that. So what did they do back then when they had to pivot?
So I first I'd like to sort of talk about, there are two concepts that you're talking about.
Okay.
We are talking about. One is pivoting, and the other one is adapting to the environment. The one is like transformation, and the other one is evolution or innovation.
So if we
Um,
could use maybe Blockbuster and Netflix as, would that be?
so yeah, that so if it is like, if the changes are incremental, like if you see uh, a new attribute in the environment and you are responding to that, then it is more like you are adapting to the market. But if it is like, if you look at the who, where, what, how, the not the where, the who, why, how, and what, those 4 points, and you try to take out two of them and replace it with two other ways of doing that, then you are talking about an actual pivot. So like, the visually, think of the basketball game where a player gets the ball and swings around with 1 foot on, like anchoring the body with 1 foot, and changes and then faces another direction. So that's almost like a pivot. So yellow taxi or and Uber, that's a real pivot where they are talking, so that's the, or Airbnb and a traditional hotel. Like Airbnb, a huge hospitality industry player, without and renting out so many beds or per night without owning a single property.
Yeah.
Right.
World's biggest hotel chain
That's
that doesn't own anything.
correct.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what is pivoting. But if it is say Toys R Us, if they were able to, for example, have, like, there was this use case, and somewhere in Boston, people were talking about a toy store which has been in business for 40 years, still going strong. They not only have a toy store, but they also have things like the hobbyist clubs, the train model club having their meetings and meetups over there, and having competition over there. So they are much more engaged with the community. So if you are losing the community, or if you have to create another community, you bring in certain measures which add to that, or which create that new space, and therefore you sort of incrementally move towards that. What you wouldn't be doing is, you wouldn't be, the whole focus of selling toys wouldn't change. Or if the founders think of themselves as not really selling toys but entertaining kids, and if that is like the vision, like envisioning a world where children are happy spending time or recreate with, not studying and stuff, then in line with that vision, they could also add on business units which don't look like toy stores, are not toy stores, but then they are still true to their vision, right? That would could also be somewhat like a pivot. And but the adaptability factor would be, looking at, so we are losing this market. um, Millennials, they don't like to go to a store, and they would rather have deliveries sent to them, even before COVID, right? So a store, so businesses like Domino's and those pizza places, where you have orders which can be plugged onto their website or the app, and getting it delivered without calling someone, or picking up the phone and then calling someone, is a new customer segment which needs to be catered to. And if you don't cater to them, then you are stuck with the old segment, which slowly is dwindling. So as long as you are okay with your business surviving till your customer segment has the ability to buy, I think that's fine. But if you want like a self-perpetuating, or a continuity to your business, then you need to look at, okay, so these are the new business, new customer segments, or these are new elements which are coming in, and this is how to reach them. And therefore I must invest in technology, where I need to get some apps running, or whatever running, and get orders through that channel. So that is the adaptability I was
Got
referring
it. I understand. I open it up to other questions because I have a couple of thoughts, but I have to play nice and share. So
to.
are there other questions for Shomo before I jump in there? Yes, Chris.
So, I'm actually not sure. I don't see how Facebook would fit in with these business laws, because my understanding of Facebook is that Facebook actually went on for years without making a profit, because Mark Zuckerberg was very, very, very focused, rightfully, I think, on just getting happy users before going through the whole, before
Monetizing it.
monetizing, before throwing in all this whole marketing thing, which makes everything much less pleasant. And it was not until he got Facebook very strong that the marketing really picked up. So, how would you comment on that, Shibomo?
So the way I would think of it is that, like, it was in that phase where there was an aspiration and a need, and the platform was responding to it, right? That clearly existed. Whether people were paying money or not is what we are talking about, right? And then whether they were paying money at the scale which made business sense for them. Now, mind you, there were investors before they made profit. The Amazon always had investors and was able to get in money. Even when the dot-com crash happened, they were the only business which was not making money. I mean, not making profits. They were making money. They were not making profits, but they were investing and building up their company. So they didn't have a cash flow issue. There was always cash in the business. Where it came from was a different issue, right? With Facebook, remember there were those Facebook games which you could pay money, and the first thing which Facebook started selling was you could buy gifts which were digital gifts, as simple as badges and stuff. I could send someone a digital teddy bear, like not a teddy bear in itself, but a image of a teddy bear, and pay them a quarter to get that, to send something. And whether it made sense or not, it's not really the issue. Like, if people, it did not solve perhaps a huge thing, except for people to, by sending it, perhaps people thought that they were showing that they cared for the other person, and the aspiration that they wanted to look cool. So those aspects were met. They paid money, and they had the marketability factor under their belt. What they didn't have at that time was making enough money for the business to succeed on its own, but they always had investors who were pumping in money. And then when they got all the ads going, they it was, so that the time horizon is what we are really talking about in terms of Facebook. In terms of, say, if you are talking about a big business like, say, a Google, again, that started off with the business, with the search engine, right? So, and most businesses are not like the square which I showed. It's not a two-dimensional image of no business is a two-dimensional entity. It's almost like a layer upon layer upon layer type of a thing. And each of these layers are made of those four squares, or four chunks. And they in turn support or interact with each other. So if it were not for the search engine, they wouldn't have had the users or the people visiting, which made sense for their AdWords program to make sense. Like the AdWords thing succeeds because there are so many businesses. So they needed to get to a point where they would have so many people to look at their, to flock to google.com instead of a directory based search like yahoo.com or an infoseek, or any of those other search engines which existed, including ask jeeves at one point. So there were, so it might often take a while, and most of the time when we are talking about these are like new age, like new economy or new technology businesses, which took more time to figure out what the product was, and stuff. Like Murray, I think you said earlier that about the testing of the whole thing, right? So you can test whether this product will sell or not without actually having the product. Like, sometimes what people do is they just have a landing page. They will collect orders. They will say that this is advance, sort of booking, ask you to pay $1 to $5 depending on what the final cost of the product would be. And if there were sufficient number of people who were putting in that $1 for hope of a like 25% discount later on, you know, the early movers and the early adopters of your new business or new product.
In many ways, isn't that what Tesla did when they pre-sold? They were taking money for the advance of the car. And that would be a really good proof of I think that'd be a type of proof of concept of seeing what the demand for it is on that. I'm just noticing the time here. I'm going to hijack the conversation right now, and I just want to talk about some stuff coming up, specifically next week. So, and we're going to come back and answer and have some more questions here. And I know some people have to bounce, and if you need to, that's great, and I understand that. But I just want to share what other webinars I have coming up here. And let me get this. There we go. So I have a segment on Mondays called the Here to There Show, and it is where I generally, this past Monday, I interviewed Shomo, and so I will, for the most part, always interview the person who's doing the Friday talk. But next week, well, we have a special one, and it is the Christmas edition of the Here to There Show. And I'm very excited to have my co-host Roberto Alas be joining me, and we're going to have a talk by Reverend Ken Harding, and it's going to be about hope at this time of year. And I just he asked me to just go over his talk recently, and I was moved to tears a few times. I was saying, yeah, right on. So if you have the opportunity on Monday to join us for the Christmas edition of the Here to There Show, it'll be worth your time. And we're also going to have a Latino band playing, and I can't remember if they have 11 or 14 band members, and they're all from like around the province of Alberta, and they're becoming. So it's going to be a great show. Bring your eggnog, and please show up. And well, the first eggnog's on me. Let's just put it that way. So that's what we have happening on Monday. On Tuesday, I have video interviews, getting out of your own way. And this is really about the do's and don'ts of getting ready for doing a video interview. It is, we talk about hardware considerations such as your webcam, your sound, your microphone, software considerations that might come along with things like virtual backgrounds and what we have to consider with that. And just how not to shoot yourself in the foot. So that's going to be next Tuesday, and because next week is Christmas, my next web event after that will be the Here to There Show on the 28th, which I don't have in the slide deck. But then for the last webinar of 2020, it's going to be communication fundamentals. I love doing this webinar. It's why communication goes off the rails, how to fix it, and understanding basically some very simple concepts will really help your communication style and have you be more effective as a communicator. So on December 29th, please come check that out. And then in the new year, we have dealing with difficult interview questions. And on January 5th, we're going to be looking at, all those questions that people hate answering. Tell me about yourself. What are your strengths and weaknesses? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Have you ever had a conflict with your boss? Tell me about critical feedback you always receive. I have a very extensive hiring background. I've done a lot of hiring. And so I encourage people to come to this webinar and ask me those questions that they don't know why they're being asked, so I can maybe unpack them for them on that. I spend a lot of time talking about behavioral-based interview questions and behavioral-based theory and how that really is your friend if you understand how to answer those questions. So if you're looking for work and you're trying to do better in the interview, please come to this webinar and ask me those questions you hate being asked. Something else we have that's fairly new that's going on is the Connect and Learn networking event. And I'm co-hosting this. I have a co-host, Colin Christopher. We've done it 3 times so far, and it has been really good. We're really been pleased with the turnout. The turnout gets more and more. And it's not your typical networking event, because actually what we focus on and what we really want to have people understand is how to network on a virtual platform. How do you do that? So we spend a lot of time about, talking about, not a lot of time, but we do talk about, make sure you're looking at the camera. Make sure that you need more energy. You need to show up more, because it's kind of flat when you're not meeting with people. And then everyone gets to practice their elevator pitch, say it out loud, and then we give feedback from the group and whatnot. And I know there's some people on the call here today that have been part of it. And so if you're looking to amp up your networking game, come check out the Connect and Learn networking event. And they are changing to, they were at 5 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. We're moving them back to 4 o'clock on that. So then we have on January 7th, defining your ideal client customer. And this is really about your avatar, who do you sell to, and whether or not you're in the business to business world or business to consumer world. We spend quite a bit of time looking at basically how do you define your ideal client and whatnot. And this is more of an interactive workshop. I find people get served a lot better, or they are served better if they can actually ask me questions as opposed to me just talking about theory on that. So if you're looking to define your avatar, your ideal client customer, this would be an outstanding workshop for you to attend. Then we have the Here to There show, which I did mention before, Mondays at 1 o'clock. And on January 7th, we have part 1 of developing your compelling elevator pitch. And we look at the value proposition. Shoma was talking a lot about the value proposition today. And this is really about why should people pay for your services? How do you define what you bring to the table in a way that people are going to say, yeah, I think that's worthwhile paying for, or finding out more? So we spend quite a bit of time looking at what a value proposition is and isn't. And then that's what the workshop's about, or that webinar is about. Then I have, of course, the Connect and Learn, which is every Wednesday. And then on the Thursday, I have part 2 of developing a compelling elevator pitch, and it's meaningful connections. And this is really about how do you build a relationship in a very short period of time? How do you connect with someone so that they're going to want to further have that conversation? And so we take everything we learn about the value proposition and then we apply it to the elevator pitch. So if any of these are at all interesting to you and whatnot, please come check them out. And we have them all listed till March of my webinars coming up. Not all my Here to There show events, but everything else is going to be out there. And we haven't announced the Connect and Learn one yet. We're going to be doing that shortly. So that's the webinars I have coming up. We've got about 7 more minutes to answer any more questions that people may have. So what other questions do we have for Shoma?
I have put in 3 links on the chat. Links to my to a few LinkedIn articles. The first one deals with mostly deals with the subject of today's conversation, and the other 2 are also relevant in the same sort of space domain. So if you want to sort of get a transcript type of a thing, then the first one would be perhaps the best one to look at.
And Shoma has a lot of expertise in LinkedIn, pardon me. And so, yeah, I would highly encourage you to reach out to him and check out these articles because, a very, very extensive background in helping businesses. You spent quite a bit of time in the Fortune 500, working with some Fortune 500 companies. Is that correct, Somo?
Right. I was with PricewaterhouseCoopers, IBM Business Consulting, and so the clients were the Toyotas or the United Healthcare or the JP Morgan Chase type of, or the Prudential of the world. So
yeah, and when you were in India with IBM, you were actually had countries that was your territories, not section or in India.
Yeah, so I had a role which spanned across spanned international borders. So I was heading a resource pool of PeopleSoft consultants in South Asia, Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines. So that's when that was an IBM role. IBM has this interesting. One of my most interesting roles was that of a people manager in IBM. in IBM, a lot of the approvals and stuff, they say like you have to get a manager approval, and that manager approval, what is not apparent from outside of IBM is that of a people manager approval, which is very different from a functional manager. So a person could be, say, band 10, which is the highest band in IBM, and still not be a people manager.
Huh. That's curious,
And, yeah, that's someone who is is very good at their job and focuses laser focus on the job, gets projects going, etc., and may not really be interested in managing the careers of other IBMers. And they simply don't pick up that responsibility. Along with that responsibility, also, like in that organization, that becomes like retention is actually baked into that responsibility. So they measure attrition, like how many people have left the organization, and that feeds into your appraisal at the end of the year if you are a people manager.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Huh.
So
that's your investment. If people are leaving, then you're part of the problem, and you haven't done something, or you haven't identified it and whatnot.
So they have a program called Basic Blue, and whenever someone becomes a people manager, they are put through that program. They are given feedback as to so there are three in the motivation, execution, retention type of indices, and depending on the feedback that they get, like direct surveys from reports, direct reports from peers and from bosses, you are given a score and a percentile. So I was rather pleased when I came in at, say, 93 percentile mark for execution and 97% mark for motivation.
Wow.
I was pretty pleased. Yeah, I was pretty pleased myself. But then the retention was horrible because we had just migrated from PricewaterhouseCoopers to IBM, and all of us were like said that if we got another job in a different firm with the same parameters, we would gladly abandon ship. That sort of marred the whole thing.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, I see that we're at our 90 minutes. So I think what we're going to do is, unless there's the last question really quick, are there any last questions or comments for Shomo? Okay, big old thank you from John. Thanks a lot, John. Well, I'm going to then call that as a wrap of my 150th web event, which I'm pretty excited for.
Yay.
And yeah. And so thank you for sharing it with me. And if I don't see you next week, I hope everyone has a cool Yule and a very hairy mistress. And I'm just going to get Shomo to hang on here, and everyone else, you don't have to leave you don't have to leave your house, but you can't stay in this room. So take care and talk to you later. All right. And let me stop sharing. Let me stop streaming. So.